Back in 1974, the day often began not with a screen, but with a sound. The kitchen clock ticking, the kettle beginning to rumble, and beneath it all, that warm, familiar crackle of the radio. A woman folds laundry by the window, steam rising from the iron. A man oils his bicycle before cycling to work. A teenager lies on the carpet, pen ready to write down the latest chart numbers. Then a voice arrives, bright and friendly, as if it has always known you. "Good morning, Britain." A simple greeting that made the whole country feel connected. It didn't matter who you were or where you lived. That voice cut through the cold and the quiet. The radio was always there, breathing life into ordinary mornings for so many. Long before the internet, before smartphones and streaming apps, the radio reigned supreme. It wasn't just background noise, it was the beating heart of British life. In the 1970s, the airwaves truly belonged to us. BBC Radio 1, born in 1967, had finally found its voice. It was youthful, energetic, and utterly in tune with the times. The jingles were catchy, the music fresh, and the DJs, they felt like mates. Though the wild days of offshore pirate stations like Radio Caroline were fading, their rebellious spirit still hummed through the static. These outlaw broadcasters had changed the game, proving that people didn't just want to be spoken to, they wanted to be heard with. That legacy lived on in every daring song choice and unscripted laugh. AM ruled most homes, its grainy, crackling sound now oddly comforting in memory. FM, cleaner and crisper, was beginning to rise. But even with imperfect reception, there was magic in that signal. You didn't just listen to the radio. You felt it. Today, it's easy to forget how wild and powerful these radio felt back then. But for millions, it was the soundtrack to growing up. There was a time when you didn't need to see a face to know who was speaking. Just a few words through the speaker, and you'd smile. That's Tony Blackburn. Cheerful to a fault, he was the voice of early mornings on Radio 1. "Hello, good morning. It's a beautiful day." Even when it was raining sideways, his energy was relentless, his music choices bright. For many, Tony was breakfast itself. Then came John Peel. Quiet, thoughtful, and endlessly curious, Peel introduced us to sounds we never knew we needed. He didn't shout, he invited. You might hear punk, reggae, or something utterly unclassifiable, but always with respect. He once said, "I just want to hear something I've never heard before," and so did we. Terry Wogan, meanwhile, wrapped us in warmth. His Irish lilt, sly humor, and gentle teasing made even the most mundane morning feel special. He didn't perform, he conversed. Listeners felt like old friends. "Is it me you're looking for?" he'd joke, and somehow it always was. And then there was Kenny Everett. Mad genius, radio's wild card. He broke every rule and yet made it all work. Characters, sound effects, chaos, but all laced with brilliance. Before algorithms told us what to like, these voices were the tastemakers. Trusted, loved, and, even now, unmistakable. It was always there, quietly humming beneath the rhythm of daily life. In the kitchen, the garage, or the backseat of a Cortina, the radio played on, not as a centerpiece, but as a comforting backdrop. Housewives stirred stew while Tony Blackburn cracked jokes between chart toppers. Dads fixed shelves with a screwdriver in one hand and Wogan's chuckle in the air. It wasn't something you consciously listened to all day, but it colored everything. Kids did their homework to the sound of Pick Up the Pops, pencils tapping nervously as they waited for their favorite tune to roll in at number 12. In corner shops and post offices, the radio sat on the counter like another member of staff. Milkmen tuned in before dawn. Lorry drivers swore by their favorite DJ. Some wouldn't start the engine without them. And then came Sunday evenings. You remember the ritual. Huddled by the heater, tape recorder at the ready, praying your dad wouldn't walk in and talk over the intro. The Top 40 countdown was sacred. You didn't just hear music. You captured it, cherished it. These weren't grand events, yet they stitched themselves into memory. The songs, the voices, the quiet presence of radio, they became the wallpaper of our lives. Always playing, always familiar. And while we rarely spoke about it, we felt it when it wasn't there, which leads us to the voices behind it all, and why they mattered so much. There was something deeply human about those voices. They didn't shout for your attention or bombard you with noise. They simply spoke, not at you, but with you. Calm, steady, familiar. Whether it was a gray morning before work or a lonely Sunday afternoon, that voice on the radio felt like a gentle companion. And in those days, that meant everything. The 1970s weren't always easy. Strikes, power cuts, rising prices. Families had their tensions, and winters could be cruel. But through it all, the radio stayed on. Sometimes faint in the background, sometimes loud in the stillness, but always there. It became a kind of emotional anchor, a source of rhythm when life felt uncertain. Most listeners never saw the faces behind the voices, yet many felt closer to them than to people they saw every day. You could trust them. They didn't judge, didn't interrupt. They simply understood. A laugh, a song, a comforting word, just when you needed it. And in a world without instant messages or scrolling feeds, the radio had a quiet way of saying something we all needed to hear. You re not alone. Today, we're surrounded by voices, curated playlists, podcasts on demand, AI assistants chirping from smart speakers. But for all their convenience, something's missing. The warmth, the mystery, the sense that someone real is reaching through the static to speak just to you. In the 1970s, radio wasn't about metrics or followers. It was about trust. Those voices didn't shout to be heard. They earned their place in our lives. They made ordinary days feel special. We may never hear radio like that again, but we'll always remember what it felt like, to be truly listened to.